Like who's one journalist that we can point at and say, wow, that's the guy. Back in the day, it was Walter Cronkite.
Who is today, though?
I don't know. Maybe it's Joe Rogan. Maybe it's Joe Rogan.
Glenn Greenwald,
Matt
Joe
Taibbi.
Rogan. Matt
You're a
Taibbi.
fan
My
of
guy.
What do you think about Brett Baer?
Great bench press.
That's it.
I like Brett Baer.
I don't know that.
I'm a huge
he's
fan
a
of
Fox News
Fareed
guy.
Zakaria. We know that. And I'll say one thing about Fareed Zakaria. He's on CNN, so everyone, in the chatterbox. He's an amazing journalist. He's Indian-born, American-made. I'm sure you can respect that. He did something the other day on his show that I was like, whoa. He did a show, and he goes, hey, my last point, I actually said something last week that was wrong, and I'm here to correct it today, and this was the point. And it wasn't even a major point.
Yeah.
But he came out, and I was like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But I think more journalists need to do that.
Brian Stelter.
No. Do you know a big problem is that the word when people think journalists and pundits are different things.
Yep.
But they've been merged together. Don Lemon is a pundit.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson is a pundit.
Right. Sean Hannity, pundit.
Yeah, they're pundits. Rachel Maddow, pundits.
Yes.
But they're conflated with journalists.
Yeah.
Right? To me, a journalist is someone who gives the news, reads the news, and it's actually a fairly
unbiased.
as
Here's
long
the
as what they're reading
Yes.
is objective. There's not much room to, they don't even really get space to give their opinion. Maybe they could do it in their tone or whatever. So, but I think that when people think journalists, we go to these famous faces who really are pundits more. Yeah, they're sort of journalists to a degree.
Well, none of those guys would have matched those scores, by the way. Every name that you said.
they're not trying
to. But they're not trying to. But
why can't they put on the bottom of the screen, this is an opinion show?
Well,
this is a
kind
news
of
show.
do.
Why can't they do that?
Well, they kind of do. So they don't present it as news. They present it as editorial. So
what do you mean presented? It doesn't say that on the TV.
Well, in the description.
You turn on your TV and it's boom, the news guy, the news lady. All right, I'm watching the news.
ESPN came out a year and a half ago and says that we're no longer committed to sports. We're committed to editorializing sports.
Yeah. Stephen A. Smith.
They're not
the biggest editorial guy out there. Just his opinion.
They don't play highlights anymore. There's nothing light. There's not. I haven't watched MTV or ESPN in. It's got to be. I've watched honestly, and this is all I ever watched growing up was MTV, ESPN, MTV, ESPN.
Yeah, me too.
Just go back
too.
and forth between those two things, hours and hours and hours every day. I'd go from Singled Out to Sports Center to whatever TRL Live to then Outside the Lines with I would just go back and forth those two channels. That was it. I've watched maybe 15 minutes total of the two channels in the last 2-3 years. And it's because they're no longer they are the story. Yeah. And their narrative is first. It's no longer about watching the home runs or the dunks. It's about, well, what does this dunk mean for society? Yeah. And it's like, I don't care. I don't care what you have to say. I don't.
This is, I think it's worth saying, this problem exists in the UK, but it's worse in the U.S. It's really, really polarized here. Like the media, it's very much,
Have you fully recognized that since being here for the last month or so?
I mean, I've seen it for many years.
Okay.
I mean, I remember, as a kid growing up in Saudi, I mean, we did get CNN out there and Fox News, et cetera. And I remember growing up, everyone always knew that Fox News was like right-leaning, but CNN was certainly deemed
supposed
as
to be the center.
Yes, and it did used to be.
Same thing with the New York Times.
Yeah,
it was the paper of record.
Yeah, it did used to be much more so. Whereas now, especially, I haven't owned a TV for 12 years. So when I do watch the news, it really strikes me how propagandistic it is. Right, so I turn it on and I'm just like, whoa, like this is just straight down this side. Especially when Trump was in office. Oh my gosh, it was literally like straight down this way, straight.
Well,
down
what was
this
his
way,
famous line about the media?
The media is the enemy of the people.
Man, you think the media took that well?
That was a bar. Right
who cares? Was he wrong?
He was right. He was right. I mean, the way they're dividing people in the past year and a half.
Depends on what team you're on.
Past year and a half, half the population thinks that there's like a mild flu / cold that's going around the world, which is like very minimal risk. Other people think that we're in the middle of a black plague, Armageddon, and a state like Florida. Oh my gosh, what are they calling your governor? Death Santis. Like, oh my gosh, Florida's like they're gonna kill all the people. What? I mean, I'm here. I'm like,
those are all the good people, by the way. We're the bad people. Those are the good people.
But people are really living in absolutely different realities, and that was created by the media all around the world, right?
Intentionally.
Intentionally. Which is when I'm like, man, the media is the enemy of the people, especially when people are now fighting each other. And, literally people are advocating for segregation now, right?
Well, that's my question. In the UK, are the politics identity politics as well there? Are there political divisions based on your immutable characteristics?
They've imported it somewhat from the U.S. So the UK has a bad habit of taking the U.S.'s the worst aspects of the U.S. Like, I love the USA. It's one of my favorite countries in the world. But there are a couple things here which I think are really, really toxic sociopolitically and culturally. And one of those things is identity politics in its various forms. Like, in the U.S., people are too obsessed with race. Way too obsessed with race. I understand it somewhat from the history. I mean, you guys use the terms Asian American, Black American, African American, White American. In England, we say British. British. Like, if someone said I'm Black British or African British, they'd be like, why'd you say that? Like, why are you using that term, right? But here, like, race is like...
We're big on labeling.
Yeah, the labeling, it runs through everything. It runs through the media. And people don't realize it because it's like the default here, right? But when you're looking at it as an outsider, I'm like, why is there always white,
news,
black? Like,
in the news,
I don't think it always was the default. I think it points specifically to Carter and affirmative action, because
I don't know.
When Carter did affirmative action, this is just before Pat came here, right? So it became beneficial to label yourself. There became there became an actual profit incentive to be labeled.
I think it goes way back. It goes way before that. I mean, the U.S. has a specific history in regards to race, right? And so these designations,
thanks
white,
to Britain,
black, etc. Yeah, but UK didn't have, like, slavery, etc., and segregation the way Jim Crow, all that. The UK didn't have all that, and also the U.S. is much more racially and ethnically diverse, and so I understand where it comes from. It's just that I'm like, it's 2021. Like, why are people still really locked into that?
I don't think it's going to go away. It's a formula to divide, and it's working very effectively. But, even you talking about CNN earlier, somebody commented about Ted Turner. If you've ever read Ted Turner's book, Call Me Ted, I don't know if you guys have read it or not. The ending of the book is fascinating, where he's interviewing one of the current folks at CNN, and he says, I'm so disappointed what you guys have done to CNN. This is not why I started CNN.
Ted Turner said that?
Ted Turner said that. He says, I didn't start CNN to be like this.
When did he say that?
This is a book he wrote years ago. This is not a recent book. Call Me Ted. I highly recommend everybody go buy his book, Call Me Ted. It is fascinating what this man did with his life and how he went from who he was to who he married to the personal life, alcohol. He talks openly about everything. There is nothing he holds back. He tells himself, I'm a great father, I'm a terrible husband. Like, the stuff he goes through with the book, it's a book you won't be able to put down. But at the end, he calls out CNN. He says, I am so disappointed with what CNN turned into. At the end of the book. Highly recommend people seeing it.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.